Star Trek the original series benefited from the talents of more than 24 different directors over the course of its 3-year, 80-episode production run. The majority directed just a single episode. Some directed 2 or 3. Only a handful of them would be recognizable by name even to most diehard Trekkies or devotees of classic television today. Out of that handful, the director who left the most indelible mark on the series and the franchise that eventually grew from it was Joseph Pevney. Originally an actor, Pevney's career as a director spanned the early 1950s to the early 1980s, and saw him direct episodes of drama and anthology shows like The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, Wagon Train, Mission Impossible, The Fugitive, Bonanza, The Incredible Hulk, and many, many more, plus comedies like The Munsters and Bewitched, as well as more than 24 feature films. Pevney ultimately directed 14 episodes of Star Trek across the show's first and second seasons, his credits including some of the most popular and acclaimed installments of the series. His first episode was Arena, and during its production, he exhibited the efficiency and inventiveness that would define the rest of his tenure on the show. Principal photography for Arena largely took place on location, which made it a more demanding assignment than a typical episode. Location shooting wasn't unusual for Star Trek, and the location in question was a familiar one, Vasquez Rocks, which was also used for the classic Trek episodes Shore Leave, The Alternative Factor, and Friday's Child, among countless other TV and film productions. But it's still more complicated than shooting an episode entirely on sound stages. Because of the amount of location shooting required, the producers gave Pevney an extra day to complete his work on the episode. As it turned out, Pevney didn't need it. He was scheduled for a 7-day shoot, but he got it done in 6. The Vasquez Rocks location did present challenges, which required Pevney to improvise. At the start of the episode, Captain Kirk and the landing party beamed down to a Federation outpost on planet Cestus 3. To represent the outpost, the production made use of a fort set that had been built in 1956 for the TV series Tales of the 77th Bengal Lancers. The fort was good, but the problem was, when Pevney placed his camera for the wide establishing shot he needed, the houses located in the distance behind the fort were visible. Modern American houses on an alien planet, where there had supposedly just been a vicious alien attack that destroyed the colony, that wouldn't do at all. With more notice, they could have prepared a matte painting to cover the houses. They could also have handled it with some kind of composite shot in post-production, but that would be an added expense. So Pevney came up with a quick and dirty fix there on the day. He positioned a piece of wrinkled black foil in front of the lens at the top of the shot. Once you know that black foil is what that is, you can't see anything else, but without that knowledge, at a glance, it looks like a slab of rock in the foreground overhanging the camera position. Not perfect, but good enough. Problem solved. That shot has been replaced in the remastered version of the episode, which is a shame. Cinematographic MacGyvering like that deserves to live forever. Directing for television is different from directing a feature film, and it was even more different in the 1960s, when seasons were longer, with more episodes, and production was an unstoppable assembly line. Television directors have less control over the tone and aesthetic of their episodes. Those sorts of decisions are made by the producers who manage the series as a whole. As such, the signature of an individual director on a show like Star Trek is far less noticeable than it would be on a movie. Directors like Joseph Pevney weren't trying to interpret the episodes they made through their own unique artistic visions. They were mostly trying to get the coverage they needed and finish on time and under budget. Even with that being the case, I think it is possible to identify what Pevney as an artist brought to his episodes of Star Trek. That efficiency of his, which I mentioned earlier, didn't manifest itself only through how quickly he was able to shoot his scripts. It's also evident on the screen. One of the reasons Pevney was able to shoot so quickly is that he knew how to complete a scene in as few shots as possible. The fewer shots, the fewer camera setups, and the fewer camera setups, the less time shooting a given scene takes, as a rule. Where Pevney's artistry comes through is in his ability to create relatively simple scenes constructed from a minimum number of shots, which are still visually interesting. For example, take this scene from Pevney's second episode as a director, The Return of the Archons. It's about halfway through the episode. The landing party has been rendered unconscious and locked in a dungeon. We're just back from commercial. After an establishing effect shot of the Enterprise in orbit, over which Kirk narrates an update via a captain's log entry, we cut to the dungeon, where Kirk is stirring. He gets up, staggers from one section of the dungeon to the next to check on the rest of his team who are still unconscious, pats his pockets and notices his communicator and phaser have been taken, walks to the other side of the dungeon to find the door shut and locked, wanders a bit farther in that direction, then turns and crosses back to where he started to wake up Spock, then over to the right to wake up the red shirts. Spock joins Kirk on this side. They stop to exchange a couple of lines, then they walk forward and to the left. Kirk remains in the foreground while Spock steps into the background to look around on his own. They both return to the right to check on the awakened red shirts and exchange some more dialogue. Kirk walks back to the left and into a medium shot while Spock remains behind him on the right. Then Spock crosses behind the wall and the camera turns to pick him up on the other side. We cut to a closer shot of Spock examining this archway, and that is the first cut since the one that brought us here from the establishing shot of the Enterprise. The first 2 minutes of this scene are a single continuous shot, but it's not static. It's not a wide, generic master shot. The camera glides from one end of the set to the other, following the actors as they explore their surroundings. We get multiple shot compositions, wide, medium, single, 2-shot, 3-shot, all within the same shot, all because Pevney knows how and when to move his camera. The shot is dynamic and fluid and creates a sense of three-dimensional space. The camera moves feel natural because the movements of the actors feel that way, and the camera is just following them. Pevney trusts his actors to know their lines and to hit their marks, and blocks and shoots the scene so simply and organically that you probably don't even notice where that camera is or what it's doing. It feels like it was shot the only way it could have been shot. One setup, one take, efficient and elegant. TV directing, hell, directing, period, at its finest. Now, is Joseph Pevney the only director capable of doing a shot like this? No, not by a long stretch. Shots like this, and even more impressive ones, are to be found throughout the history of television. That is, in well-directed episodes of television. Shots like this one are one of the things that separate talented and prolific directors like Pevney from directors who weren't successful enough to have 30-plus year careers. Think of how many episodes of television have been produced just in the United States since, say, 1950. Think of how many different people directed those episodes. The overwhelming majority of those people are unremarkable and essentially forgotten. You see their name come up in the credits when you watch the episode, and it means absolutely nothing to you. The very, very few whose names you do recognize, the ones who did have long careers, are mostly directors like Pevney, capable of working on schedule and under budget and doing it with some style. Perhaps because of his technical expertise and ability to do good work fast, Pevney was assigned many episodes that required extensive shooting on location, or on backlots, or on new and unfamiliar sets. One example is The Devil in the Dark, which takes place almost entirely in a subterranean mining colony and centers on a conflict between a group of miners and an alien, the Horta, that is meant to be a kind of sentient rock, but looks more like a gigantic roaming blob of burnt cheese. In less capable hands, the episode itself might have turned out to be cheese, but under the direction of Pevney, The Devil in the Dark became a classic entry in the series and remains an example of Star Trek at its very best, an intelligent and humanistic plea for tolerance and compassion, as morally and thematically sublime as it is superficially ridiculous. The Devil in the Dark falls into another pattern that recurs throughout Pevney's Star Trek filmography. Several of his episodes turn on big, melodramatic emotional moments. In The Devil in the Dark, we have Spock's agonized mind meld with the Horta. In Amok Time, my favorite original series episode, we have the emotional roller coaster of Kirk's apparent death at the hands of Spock, followed by Spock's uncharacteristically elated reaction to discovering that Kirk is still alive. And in The City on the Edge of Forever, arguably the most popular and revered episode the original series ever produced, we have the wrenching moment of truth where Kirk must allow his love, Edith Keeler, to die in order to put history back on course. In those episodes and more, Pevney, himself an actor, remember, relies on his cast to do the heavy lifting, confident that they can more than carry the weight. By the way, I just said City on the Edge of Forever is arguably the most popular and revered episode of Star Trek. Its only real competition for that title in the popular imagination is The Trouble with Tribbles, which was also directed by Joseph Pevney. One guy directed what many people consider to be the two best episodes of Star Trek, the original series. What an extraordinary testimony to Pevney's talent. That's like saying, I don't know, the two best Star Trek movies were both made by the same director. Oh, wait! Nick, I got you next. I began this video describing Joseph Pevney as a director who left an indelible mark on Star Trek. Let me close by talking about two such marks. Not only did Pevney direct both The City on the Edge of Forever and The Trouble with Tribbles, and it would be difficult to find two episodes of classic Trek more different from each other than those, Pevney also, in those episodes, created arguably the two most defining shots of the series. And like the episodes in which they appear, the two shots I'm about to show you could hardly be more different from each other. First, there's this shot from The City on the Edge of Forever. It's from early in the episode, before anyone has charged through the time portal, before history has been changed. Captain Kirk and Spock exploring the area surrounding the Guardian of Forever. Then, as the Guardian speaks, this iconic image of Kirk and Spock, framed by the illuminated Guardian itself, the heroes of Star Trek, confronting one of its most compelling and powerful mysteries. Being a good director is about more than coming up with memorable shots, to be sure. Overall, I find the sequences that take place on the Guardian of Forever's planet to be some of Pevney's best work. The atmosphere is otherworldly, alien, yet familiar, strange, tantalizing, ancient. But it's hard to argue with the iconic status of this shot in particular. If there's a single shot that could speak for the entire Star Trek franchise, it's this one. Or maybe it's this one. From the ruin of a primeval time portal able to bridge present with past, to the relative normality of a space station corridor, an ordinary location for these characters, and the extraordinary image of Kirk buried in an avalanche of troublesome tribbles. It's absurd, it's goofy, it's comedic in the broadest way. It places Kirk, our bold and courageous lead protagonist, in an unfamiliar context, robs him of his dignity, makes him a fool, and he bears it with chagrin but good humor. It's a simple image, a visual payoff to the premise of the episode, and an unforgettable shot that represents the silly side of Star Trek at its absolute best. Besides the ability to mix efficiency with artfulness, another necessary quality for being a successful TV director is versatility. Joseph Pevney did so much good work on so many different shows, but even if we limit our considerations to his 14 episodes of Star Trek, that versatility shines through. Not only did this one man direct both The City on the Edge of Forever and The Trouble with Tribbles, not only did he direct Arena and The Return of the Archons and The Devil in the Dark and Amok Time, he also directed Cat's Paw and The Apple and The Deadly Years and Journey to Babel, and even that's not all of them. Why do I regard Joseph Pevney as the best of the original series directors? Because he directed some of the best episodes, yes. Because he was a sophisticated yet unpretentious visual storyteller, yes. But mostly, it's because he was as dependable, adaptable, and multifaceted as Star Trek itself.